Okay, so hi, Dr. Murray. Thank you for joining me today in this Zoom meeting regarding my GMO community outreach project as part of the Forage National Science Summit. And I'm definitely looking forward to knowing more about you and your perspective of genetically engineered foods.
Nice to meet you, and I will be as much help as I can.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to be asking some questions. So starting off, so I just wanted to understand like your level of understanding of GM food.
Well, I've been working on trying to make I don't like the term GMO, by the way, because I think it's a misleading term. But I have been trying to make transgenic animals and genetically engineered animals and now gene edited animals for almost 40 years. So I started my first project at the end of 1982 and made my first transgenic livestock in 1985. And so I have been working directly in this field as a developer of animal lines since basically the mid 1980s. I've worked with most of your major lab animals. Well, not lab. I've worked with mice, but I've worked with goats, sheep, pigs, cattle, and even chickens. So I have a wide experience in genetic engineering livestock species.
Okay, so do you consider genetically engineered food to be safe?
Yes. And the issue with regulation is things are regulated because they're genetically engineered. What's important is what has been done to the animals. What's the product? The fact that you move a piece of DNA into an animal or around does not in and of itself mean anything is harmful. The DNA wouldn't even have to be expressed. It would still be regulated as a genetically engineered animal. Whereas what's important from a food safety point of view and an animal health and welfare point of view is what does that piece of DNA do? What is the downstream product? What's the gene product, the protein that's made or the RNA that's made? And unfortunately, regulation isn't looking at the end product. Regulation is triggered by the act of genetic engineering, which is not helpful. You could certainly create a genetically engineered animal which would not be safe to eat. You could transfer a known allergen into cow's milk if you wanted to basically sabotage people, I suppose. But in reality, when people are trying to make better animals, more efficient animals, when they're trying to make more nutritious food, they're trying to do just the opposite of that. And also from a regulatory point of view, if you look at the Food Safety Inspection Service of the USDA, which inspects livestock for slaughter, the first thing they do is make sure it's a healthy animal. So they have to see the animal on the hoof, in the pen, outside the slaughter plant, and make sure that animal's healthy and able to move under its own speed and those things in order to become food, because a healthy animal is a wholesome animal, makes wholesome food. If you were to genetically engineer an animal which was unhealthy, and that certainly has happened, the original sheep that I made, for instance, had a growth hormone transgene in them. None of those sheep lived to breed, to produce, because they were unhealthy. But in fact, those are not going to be economically successful animals. They're not going to make it into the marketplace. So I think there's no reason, and I certainly know of no genetically engineered animals that were intended for life for food that would not have been safe to eat.
So so now the next question is like, do you personally think that like there's like enough information about genetically engineered food out there in the world? Like just personally?
I think the information is available. Um, I think people choose not to look at it. I think the people who are most stridently opposed to genetic engineered animals in the food supply often ignore it, or in fact, downright misleading or non truthful about what they say. I think presenting the information in more ways to get it in front of more people should be helpful. Um, I'm not necessarily convinced that public education is going to change things because people have a tendency to only believe what they want to believe. So you have to have a receptive audience. If you have a receptive audience and you give them the facts, then I think is going to make a difference. If you have a non-receptive audience, I think they have a tendency to ignore the facts. But that level of education helps at the level of educating the regulators, because the regulators are where we really need people to understand and to um, make good regulation.
See, so do you personally read the food labels on food products?
Yes,
Okay.
I very often look at the food labels, both the nutritional content, which I do like to look at. I also like to look at where food is sourced from. And being a developer of genetic engineered food, I have a tendency to want to avoid things that are non-GMO, or they're being sold on the basis of being misleading. Right? You'll see things like salt that's not non-GMO. Well, it never was. It's misleading to put that label on it. And I object to that. So, but yes, I do read labels. I always have.
So do you personally think that there's like many benefits to GMO?
I think there's a lot of potential benefits to increasing the efficiency of agriculture. Um, so you can have multiple places that can be useful, and GMOs are. Sorry, I got to catch my thought. Genetic engineering animals is not a silver bullet that's going to make everything good. It's simply one tool we can use in agriculture. But what people are tending to not focus on is, with the current population of the earth and the growing population of the earth, we need to produce more food with less land and less water than we have ever done before in the history of humanity. And in fact, a friend of mine once gave me the statistic that we have to produce more food in 2050 per year than humanity has eaten in the entirety of human history. So we have to do that with less land and less water. So we need to be more efficient. We need to have, if we can, improve the nutritive density of the food. At the same time, we have to protect the welfare of the animals. We have a different issue than plants do. People not so concerned about the welfare of a corn plant. But so we have to be really cognizant of improving animal welfare, the efficiency of production, and that, because that goes to producing more food per unit of feed, per unit of land, per unit of water. And that goes to improving health of the animals, as well as their welfare, as well as their metabolic efficiency. And we can, in fact, improve the nutritive value. And if you've looked at my work, we've got genetically engineered goats at Davis, where we express a human protein in the milk. It's a protein which is naturally occurs in milk, but it occurs in human milk at roughly 1,600 times higher concentration than it is in goat's milk. and 3,000 times higher concentration in human milk than it is in cow's milk. And that particular protein is antimicrobial. It helps establish a healthy gut microbiome. It helps to establish a healthy gastrointestinal tract in the young organism, in the young animal. That's a case of trying to improve the nutritional benefits of that product. So we can do all of these things. There's examples I could give you for increasing animal welfare, for increasing decreasing the environmental footprint, therefore increasing the environmental sustainability, um, disease resistance, and nutritional value. There's examples of all of those that you can do by genetic engineering, and you cannot do any other way. There's other things you could do that you can do by breeding or by this or by that. So yeah, I think it is a technique which, if we're going to successfully feed people 30, 40 years from now, unless we have a pandemic way worse than this one, um, we need to increase that ability to feed people, and we need every tool. And I think genetic engineering and gene editing is a tool we have to use to get there.
See, so what do you think is the level of responsibility that farmers have to like ensure that their genetically engineered crops are safe?
I think the production farmer needs to rely on the company selling the product to them and the regulatory agencies that have proved it. I don't think an individual corn grower in Iowa is at a level where he should be saying, well, this GMO corn is safe and that GMO corn is not. But the company and the regulators who have approved that corn are the ones who are there to show that it's safe. And in fact, having genetically engineered corn BT corn has vastly decreased the incidence of fumonisin toxicity to people. So there's actually a net positive value in decreasing mold growth that has made the corn safer for human consumption. But that's not at the level of the individual farmer. Although on the animal side, I would say the individual farmer is responsible for the welfare of his animals.
So do you buy, like, I was just wondering, so do you buy more organically grown foods or like genetically engineered foods?
Well, I don't shop for organic. I will buy organic things when they are better than the non-organic at the farmer's market or at the local supermarket. But if I have a choice between a good non-organic and a good organic, I will buy the non-organic because I think it's a more sustainable production system. Again, organic's fantastic. You can't feed the world with organic production. So again, I do moderately shop against organic. As far as GMO, I don't care if I don't look to see if the corn I'm buying or the cornflakes or the bread or something's GMO or not GMO. I don't. I assume almost anything that's labeled non-GMO probably has GMO in it.
Yeah.
Because of oil and sugar are probably going to be corn oil and sugar, corn syrup or even sugar beet is going to be in almost everything that's not labeled it's not labeled non-genetically modified. It probably has something in it that is. But I don't care. I assume it's safe. I trust the regulators that have said that this is safe.
Yeah, so you don't purposefully like avoid GM foods, right?
Not at all.
Okay.
I would purposely buy it if Aqua Advantage salmon steaks, Aqua Advantage salmon steaks were available. I would buy them.
So how common do you think genetically engineered foods are in the US?
On the plant side, very common. If in fact, if you're buying a manufactured product and it is not labeled non-GMO, then I would say there's probably an 85 or 90% chance that it has something in it that's genetically from a genetically modified plant. On the animal side, there isn't anything out there, so that's not an issue. In any animal only product other than Aqua Advantage salmon is going to be non-GMO because they've never been approved. Animals have been created that would be useful, but they've never been approved for use.
So do you feel if like you have many choices like when it comes to like genetically engineered food versus like non-genetically engineered food? I was just wondering.
I mean, yeah, I mean the non-GMO verified project and stuff. There's a lot of product out there that's got some sort of third-party verification that it doesn't contain genetically modified, and in some cases, that's all you can buy. The companies have simply chosen, from a marketing point of view, to make all of their product line non-GMO. And if you want that product line, then that's what you're going to get. So I think there's plenty of choice out there.
Okay. So do you think labeling of genetically engineered foods is like critical or like mandatory like for these like local supermarkets, farmers markets?
Well, I think if you were to mandate labeling it as GMO, what people would very rapidly learn is that there's whole classes of foods in which nothing is GMO, which would actually impact the non-GMO verified. Again, if you want to go buy blueberries, you can find blueberries that'll say non-GMO on them. Well, there are no GMO blueberries anywhere, so they're all non-GMO, whether they're labeled or not. I think from the point of view of manufactured food products, I think a lot of people would be surprised that almost everything has GMO in it unless it's specifically, they've gone against it. And so I think there's plenty of selection out there, and I think there's plenty of choice. Um, and I think it's hard if you want to buy organic or non-GMO verified, then you can guarantee that you're not getting GMO because organic can't use GMO. Anything that's certified organic is GMO free. So there are choices both ways. You can choose to get it or choose not to get it. I don't think labeling things as containing a GMO product is useful. I think the term itself is misleading. And I think that the part of the reason, in my opinion, that the opposition people want to label food is because they can then campaign against it. By putting a GMO label on something, you now allow it to be targeted. If there's no safety issue, then I don't think it should be labeled.
Okay. So whether you buy non-genetically engineered food or genetically engineered food, so like would you so you would look at like the nutritious value of like each of
I
those?
look at the nutrient value and the cost value of the product.
I see.
Right. And that's true of organic. It's not that I don't buy organic. Organic usually costs a little bit more. And if it's not better value, then I won't buy it. If the organic is clearly better value or better quality, I will buy organic. Because I'm interested in having good, wholesome, tasty food. And but I don't discriminate against any production system.
Okay. So do you think the benefits of genetically engineered foods outweigh like its risks, like potential risks?
Yes, I do. I think there are always risk benefit. I think one of the regulatory problems on the animal side is benefits aren't considered, only perceived risks, not even real risks. I think you do have to be cognizant of what is the risk of a GMO crop spreading as a weed. What's the risk of a GMO fish getting loose and disrupting an ecosystem? I think those are real risks. I don't think anything that's made it to the level of being released for food poses a food risk, but I do think that's a very real risk on the other side. On the other hand, from an environmental point of view, having BT, corn and cotton and soybeans and glyphosate resistant has had tremendous environmental benefits. Less pesticide is used in the world. And remember, the pesticide didn't just kill the bug you were trying to kill, it killed other things as well. Um, the fact that you can do no-till planting of crops and now use glyphosate to kill the weeds preserves topsoil, so there's less erosion. So I think there's been tremendous environmental benefits derived from genetic engineered crops. Again, on the animal side, there are no examples to talk about because nothing's been approved other than aqua advantage salmon, which actually is a more cost effective, more efficient, more sustainable way to culture salmon.
So you're not like too concerned with like the long-term like environmental effects of genetically engineered food, right?
No,
Okay. But are you like concerned with like the possibility of long-term health effects?
no.
All right. So it's really just like about the nutritional value again, right?
Right, and I mean, I think once something has gone through regulatory and been approved as being safe, there's always nothing is 100% certain. People need to understand they don't have a risk-free world to live in. But I think you have to look at what are the potential downside of genetic engineered. But again, it's not genetic engineered wholesale. It's this genetic engineered corn, this genetic engineered papaya, this genetic, it's the individual line of plant or animal that you have to talk about. Does it pose a risk or not a risk? I would argue the environmental risk of having that genetically engineered bent grass for golf courses spreading as a weed is not worth the benefits of having it on the golf course. The risk is too great of it becoming a weed. Can I say that the same is true about a genetically engineered goat that expresses lysozyme in its milk? No. So again, you can't blanket say GE is a risk or not a risk because it goes by what is the product. And I can certainly point to products which could potentially be risky. And is the benefit of that product outweigh that that potential risk? I mean, papayas would not be grown in Hawaii without genetic engineering. And yet the same thing isn't being allowed in, say, Kenya or Uganda for the banana crop. And people are probably starving because they won't use a technology which is safe. So the risk to those people far outweighs any risk coming from the genetically engineered banana plant. Right? You always have to balance risk and benefit. But it's by each case. It's not global. And that's one of the problems with the debate is people say, well, GMO is not safe. Well, what GMO is not safe? And the answer is it's not. I guess it gets back to regulation. Do you regulate because you've changed a piece of DNA? Or do you regulate based upon what the physiological consequences of that piece of DNA are? And again, there's no risk to eating DNA.
So it really like depends on like each product or each genetically
It
engineered.
depends on the product. It depends on what the genetically engineered change does. In the case of a transgene, what protein does it express? What does that protein do? What is the consequence to the animal of that protein or the plant of that protein? But just the fact that I put DNA in, so what? There's no two meals you have ever eaten in your life are chemically identical. No two meals. I don't care what they are, because broccoli grown in this patch of dirt today is going to have a different chemical composition to broccoli grown in that same patch of dirt 6 months from now. They're not going to be identical. They won't be identical at the level of their DNA. They won't be identical at the level of the proteins that they express, of the nutrients that they have. And that's true of animals or plants. So no two meals you've ever eaten are the same. So again, when you define risk, what are we talking about? And it has to be product by product. Can't be global.
Okay. So now to like sum all of this up, so what is like your pretty much like your overall opinion of genetically engineered food?
I think it's a technique which has definite potential benefits to improve food security and the nutritional value of food for people. It's just a tool. It's just one method we have of affecting changes that will increase the sustainability of production or the nutritional value of the product. Um, but I think it is a very valuable tool.
Okay. So now for my very last question. So I was just wondering, what would the best way be to like reach to my community, and not like in terms of like how like exactly I would reach to my community, like with devices or like Zoom online meetings or something like that, but like in terms of spreading like the right information, like in terms of like pros and cons and like risks and benefits and etc.
Well,
Something like
I think part of it is to try and educate people that the risk and benefit is based on the individual product line, not so. I'm actually would say you can lump a lot of different BT corns together, but the benefits and risks of BT corn are very different than glyphosate uh, bent grass or lysozyme goat's milk or fast growing salmon. So I think getting people to understand that the risks and benefits are based upon the product line, not the fact that it's been engineered or changed. And again, I don't know if you where you're at in looking up information, but if you take any two people on the face of the earth, my wife and I, or you and me, it doesn't matter. There's somewhere between 12 million and 24 million base pairs of DNA difference. And that's true if I take two cows, right? No two cows are identical, right? That's the whole point of genetics. We're not identical. So the fact that there's been a genetic change, a genetic addition, a genetic deletion, is not in and of itself good or bad, and it doesn't pose a safety risk of any kind. It's what's the function downstream that may pose an issue. I can put in a piece of DNA which is perfectly safe for you to eat. If that DNA makes a protein that creates an allergen that you're allergic to, then it's not safe. But it's not the DNA, it's the protein. And so I think stressing the appropriate point at which regulation and risk needs to be assessed is probably what a lot of people don't really understand.
that. All right, I think that's it. So those are all my questions. So thank you so much for your insight on genetically engineered foods. I really appreciate it, and yeah, I think Yeah, that's
Well,
it.
I'm happy to do it. And if you think of any other questions, let me know.
Okay.
I'm locked down here in my back bedroom. I'm happy to talk to you.
Okay.
Okay? And let me know how it goes. I'm very curious to know how it goes. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, and one other thing. Have you seen the movie Food Evolution?
No, I don't think I.
Look up and watch the movie Food Evolution. It will help you out with your project.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Well, good luck.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.